Forms. So the easiest way to irritate me is to have messy data. Like that's going to be like, I'm just going to kind of twitch, and it's really going to bother me, and I'm not going to focus on the rest of your project because something's wrong. And it has driven me nuts since my ARCA days a long, long time ago. Blah, blah, blah. So I'm on the OSGO-US board trying to get thrown off. I'm trying to help with the QGIS documentation group. Oh my Lord. Anybody QGIS users list? Anybody keep up with that? Have you watched the documentation emails flying around? Maybe it's on the developers list. They had a question of the month, and people were really happy about the documentation, but they weren't happy at the speed it was getting updated for QGIS, and that has led to, oh boy, I've never seen heartburn on the QGIS developers or users list before. This one started it, and so they're trying to revamp their documentation. So I said, hey, I'll help, and then they gave me the rule book, Cathud. I've had a documentation. I'm like, oh man, I don't think I can help. I don't know what I can do. I'm gonna do it though at some point. So when you're editing in QGIS, this is kind of new-ish, sort of, for QGIS. It's not. It hadn't been around long. I think widgets they used to be called widgets in the 2 series, and then they changed, I think, in 3.4 to forms. But you can build a whole set of clickable menus to make your life so much easier. And there's a lot of edit tools in QGIS. We could have easily talked about the advanced digitizing panel, which is fun. You can actually put in coordinates and sit there and work to your heart's content, and Dennis could put in measurements and measure exactly 50 feet and draw circles and buffers and all kinds of craziness. But I'm more worried about people getting their data in correctly at this point. And so I'm going to jump back and forth with QGIS. I may abandon the slides and just start running with it, but maybe not if you're going to glare at me. You're going to glare at me, okay, maybe I won't do that. So QGIS.
That looks vaguely familiar.
It should look vaguely familiar. So I got hugged up in this project for this county up in West Tennessee, thanks to Ed and Chad, dragged me in on that one, dealing with addresses. And it was something I have dealt with a lot in my career, actually. Post federal work, I've dealt a lot with addresses. And how do you enter data with this? And Chad's got a system, Ed's got a system, everybody's got a system for entering data. How do we make it easier, and what do we do? So if you pop open the address attribute table for this, you've got there's a whole bunch of stuff in here, a whole bunch of fields. How do we easily enter data and make this nice and wonderful? QGIS has a couple of different ways. So right clicks make the world go round. QGIS, you right click on a layer and you get this, which will kind of tell you everything. We watched Niall this morning play with symbology. That'll look a little bit familiar. He talked about labeling. I'm going to talk about forms. And in the forms part, well, actually, let's talk about menus before we talk about forms. So you can build your own menu system in QGIS. By default, anytime you add data, and let's just go ahead and drop a point, badink, that's going to come up. And it's got everything. And if you're like me, maybe you don't want to see everything, or you got an intern and you don't want the intern to see everything, or you're handing this off to somebody else and you're like, oh my God, don't screw this up. You can kind of fix it to where they can't, probably. That's what comes up by default. And by default, that's not super user friendly. We're going to make it a little bit better. So let's cancel out of that. Let's go in here and look. You got 3 menus you deal with here. I'm going to jump back and forth a lot. Auto generate is on by default. That's what you see when you drop a point. You get a whole menu spread of things you can enter. Drag and drop designer is another one. And provide UI file. We'll do that one at the very end if I'm feeling really froggy. Those 3 things will decide how your forms look on your menu when they come up. Let's jump over here. So auto generate is on by default. and it allows you to set form types also. So you can go in here and start saying, hey, I really want this to be a drop-down list, or I want this to be a combo box, or I want this to be a radio button, or I want this to be a date field. Like, these things are built in to QGIS. They're just not readily apparent. The drag and drop designer, once you get these things set up, you can go into drag and drop and say, you know what, I don't need Chad to see latitude and longitude, so I'm going to move those things out because I got that firing off in the background. He doesn't want to mess with it. I don't want him to see the identification field because that's auto-generated and it doesn't bring anything, for him editing. I don't want him to see this. Maybe I want him to see this other thing, but I don't want him to edit it. There's things you can do at this point. You can also arrange your attributes. If you're like me, you will, build this spectacular attribute field, and then you'll remember something you should have put at the beginning. It's at the end. And you're going, oh my God, I wish I could fix that. Actually, you can in the attribute table, but you can also set up your menu to more mimic for data input. And forms you get. This isn't all the forms. We're not going to talk about everything because we can't. There's no way. This is easily a half a day. Checkbox, classification, color, date, time, enumeration. I have no idea what that is. Attachments, key values, value maps, value relations, a whole list of things. You also notice the menu that comes up will also be highlighted, things that you can set. Maybe the field type isn't appropriate for attachment, so it's not going to be highlighted. So not every field you can set things up. Not every column of data isn't going to accept every form. So there's certain things you're going to be able to see, some you're not. And there are defaults with all the forms. Now, the nice thing with the defaults, maybe you want things to fire automatically. Very similar to database trigger. I prefer triggers on most of my stuff in the database just kind of tucked away, firing happily, helping me attribute data. But you can do this in QGIS. You can fake it and set things up. You can also say, I've got to require data. So I'm going to click not null. You've got to put something in there at that point. So if you've got a data entry form and somebody's going to skip the meter type or the address field or something, you're going to say, no, you got to put something in there. Even if it's wrong, you got to put something in. It's got to be unique, so it can't match anything else in the column. There's, all this stuff you can do. We're going to talk about date, time, attachment, unique values, relation, value map, and value relation. Man, I hope this works. Value relation, we may not get all the way through. They get more and more complicated the further we go in this. But let's take a look at date, time. So I'm going to go in here and look at the edit date. Now notice I'm in QGIS. QGIS has now said, you know what, that's a date field. I bet you want to use the date time widget. It's going to take a guess. I probably do. So I can go in here and set the field, date, time, ISO date, time, custom. I'm going to let it go date, time. Widget display, let's just do it by default. Let's go ahead and put a point in. And notice here for edit date, I've now got this widget. I can put in the date. So we're going to go ahead and pick today. Also notice it's got this really cool thing where it's going to want you to manually key in the time. You can if you want to. I don't want to. Let's go back and look at edit date. Let's set a default value. So Niall had mentioned this morning that there were a lot of field calculators. There's a lot of field commands built into QGIS. If you love Python, I do, but don't make me do something in it off the cuff because it won't work. Anyway, if you dig through the expression dialog, you can find all these little cool tools like now. So if I actually search for now, I get a description of what now does. So in this case, for edit date, you know what? I don't really care I just want that to be text edit. And now if I go in here and drop a point, notice the edit date field is now filled in with 10/25/2019, 251. Already filled out. Kind of nice. I don't have to worry about that. I'm just going to say okay, save it. Let's jump back and look. So that's the date field. Very easy to set up. That wasn't that bad, right? Not too scary. So yeah, you can grab it automatically. And you can do that with a lot of things. So imagine you're doing that with time. Imagine you're doing it with length, area, different things that you want done automatically. So if you're doing parcels, maybe you want to collect the area in square feet automatically. Maybe you want, if you're doing land cover, forestry work, you may want acres. You can set all that up to auto-generate. Makes it a little bit easier. So that way you're not relying on, for instance, in like other software, you're building a shape file and you got to go, I got to run acres on this. I got to run the field calculator on this every time. So open the attribute table. Was it right click, calculate geometry? It's been too long. What if I want a pick list? I don't want people typing in street names, or I don't want people typing in, what do you guys do at the gas company a lot? Valve somethings.
Yeah, lots of different.
That's it's a utility term, valve somethings, in case you guys want to use it. Let's go back into here. Let's look at the name. You know what? Unique values. So let's go in here, drop this. Now I can get a pick list of all the streets in there. Works great unless you're adding a new street. We're going to pretend Henry County hadn't got a new road yet. So, but we got a pick list. We can do this. We can pick through it. It's also kind of nice because you can very quickly look at your data. Now this isn't alphabetical. Let me see if I can change this. Name. Editable, label on top. Okay, I can't. I can also make it editable. So if I go back in here, drop a point, cancel. As an editable field, I can start typing. And, MA will give me all the M's. So if you don't want to see everything at once, not too bad. Now I got two things I'm doing automatically that I didn't have access to before. A little bit cleaner data, hopefully. What if you're just really a data nerd and you absolutely don't want somebody to pick their own thing? Like, we did it with unique values, but say Henry County's going to put in a new street, or they're going to put in the pre-types for the street or for the address, north, south, east, and west, northeast, northwest. Let's go ahead and set that up. So let's go back in here. And as you can see, I'm not really doing anything. Value map, north. Now, I'm doing this to show you something. South, east, and west. And let's go ahead and do this and type north, south, east, and west. Now, if I save this, it's actually going to save an N there. You noticed I put an N for description. I put an N for value, but the description was north. This hung me and Ed up one day. We were talking about it. You had put in, it was the same thing, east, west, north? Yeah.
South, east, no, city limits.
Yeah, city limits. So the value will be in, but it's going to show up as north in your field. So it's that same kind of issue you get in an ArcMap where you do subtypes and domains. And you may have a subtype, let's see, oh my God, subtypes are numeric. So you may have like a 100 for a value, and you ship it off, you send somebody a shapefile, and you don't package it up quite like that, and they get the 100 in their column, they're like, what is that? Just be careful when you're doing this. But I got a pick list, a little bit cleaner data. I can't, and it's pretty easy too. Now I can come back and say, you know what, we're going to add more stuff in. It can get a bit hairy if you've got a lot of people editing. If all you guys are editing, we've set this up and suddenly I change it, you gotta go back and touch everybody for right now and fix that. We're not gonna do that for long though, because I found another trick. What if you got this database running? And it's kind of the same idea as the unique values. You're giving it a predefined list for people to pick things. Let's say we go ahead and put it in the database. And in this case, I've got a spatialite database running over here on the side. And I've got some other tables that I have built. And these were built just running SQL commands in the background, pulling out information. I just want to see, what's happening in here. And if I look at street type, let's open the attribute table. There's the type of every street in Henry County. There's only 16 of them. Avenue, Boulevard, Circle Court. What is CV? Cove. Okay. We've got all these. So I'm going to jump back into address points. And let's go to type. Let's just take this out, because I kind of did this wrong. That should have been pre-dir versus what I was doing. I'm going to make this a value relation. So in this case, it's going to be street type, the key column being, let's see, type and description. I may be doing that slightly wrong, but it's going to work for the demo. Now I'm pulling from that table. So what would make my life a lot easier is actually to make this as a table in the database and then point all you guys at the table. So we're all editing one thing. So if something new, Karen pops up and says, hey, we got a boulevard now, I can go in there and edit that table. You guys all see the changes at that point, making editing a little bit easier, which is good because we want everybody pulling in the same direction, not a different direction. So let's go ahead and save that. So I'm not going to do this one because I know it's going to fail. Value relation insanity. So you saw me just pulling a table, and we had all the types. What if you could actually pull in a drop-down menu list, and you say, okay, you know what? This pipe is PVC, and PVC can only be 15, 16, and 18 inches. You can do that with the value relation widget. You start picking your different fields and you drive your way through it. I actually had a QGIS file saved and apparently I deleted it. I set all this up ahead of time because I didn't want this one to screw up. But you actually go in, and if you see what I'm doing here, you go down to the filter expression and you actually tell it, you know what? Look at the first field, which will be a structure. And if they pick military, I want this next field to only include military values. So if they pick PVC, I only want this size of thing. If they pick residential, I only want to see things that are residential. So that's one more thing you can do to build a drop-down list. And this actually, I was working with Ed, and we built a drop-down list that was 3 columns long. You would pick one thing, it would drive the next thing, which would drive the next thing. So you can build this thing out pretty robust way of doing it. Not too bad, not a bad way to do things. I've got a blog article on it. If you look for value relations on the web, you'll see a lot of information come up. This came up late in the 2 series, and in 3 they kind of nailed it on how this works. It works great for small databases also. So if you don't want to go to the hassle of doing a post-GIS install, you can do spatialite or geopackage, even shape files, and work your way through it. And you'd have to have like a CSV file to pull in, but it would work. Attachments. So let's say, man, I had this really worked out well with the example that I deleted. Yeah, the courthouse. So if you click on the courthouse, I've got all this other information, and we're going to I'm going to tie this all up here in a second, hopefully make this cool, I hope. Let's go to properties. Let's set photo as an attachment. Now, not exactly the smoothest way to go about doing this, but it works. So I've sent Chad out to take pictures of everything. And he's went out to take a picture of the courthouse. He's actually saved the photo so that we know it's the courthouse photo. So I'm going to jump in, say okay. We're still editing. I'm going to add a photo here. Other locations. So my laptop died, and I sent it off, and it came back like the day before the conference. So I was very hurriedly adding things back on here going, and let's just pick, let's get that one. So we're going to add it in. So I've went in to add an attachment. It's actually picked the entire directory structure of where that picture is. I'm going to go ahead and save it. Nothing really spectacular about that, but let's go back, look at photo, and kind of look at the rest of this. And I want to use a hyperlink. I want to display the full path. And you know what? I want to see the picture. Not going to be that spectacular. I'm going to click on this, and actually I got the picture down at the bottom. But the nice thing is I got a hyperlink. So there's the courthouse. You can start tying your photos together into your database fairly easily. Not difficult to do. Now, a lot easier than it used to be. So we've done all this. Anybody scared? Nothing. Nobody's really freaking out yet.
The thing that's tripping me up with the photos is that little slider to the right. I always lose. I forget about
Yeah.
that, and I don't see all those other options.
Yeah, and this is kind of the problem with QGIS. There's so much functionality built into it now. They're trying to cram everything into a screen, and there's too much going on for this to happen. So let's do this. Let's go over here to the drag and drop designer. You know what? I don't want to see that. I don't want to see this. I don't need to see Latin long, which I could have set as a value, as an expression to automatically fill out as I'm dropping points in. I'm going to get rid of that. What else do I need to get rid of? I want to get rid of that. I'm going to get rid of that. Now let's go back. Let's drop a point. This should be significantly, notice it's changed a little bit and it's a little bit smaller. So my menu is changing. I could get rid of more things. But with this drag and drop designer, I still have, the functionality built into it. But wait, we can do one more silly thing. And this is, I don't know, am I squashing Eric Perper's next presentation with doing a plugin?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Let's say, so QGIS comes with QT Designer. You can build menus in QT Designer. And you can save these things and go, you know what, I want to save this. I really need to make a shortcut to this. I want to save this. Yeah, just replace it. And I want to add, Graham, how am I doing on time? Quit Snapchatting.
I'm not on Snapchat. It says you've been going for, hold on. It's so confusing because it says you've been going for 42 minutes, but that's a lie.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So you can drop, so if you notice over here, there's a lot of input widgets in QT Designer, and you just have to know, I would literally open this up one day and just start dragging stuff over and going, what does this do? I don't understand what this does. I'm going to drag in a combo box, and I'm going to drag in a label. And the label I'm going to call type. Yeah, type. And for this, my column name was named, type. So I'm going to name this widget type because, man, I hope this works. Mama said never do live demos, and we're going to do one. So let's go ahead and close this. Let's go back into the address points. You know what? I want the UI file, and I want to get this. So I've assigned it this UI file. We're going to say OK. And I've built a menu using Qt Designer. So for those of you doing heavy data editing, maybe there's an amount of stuff you don't want your users seeing, or maybe you need people editing. Kristen's got to edit a whole bunch of stuff, and Tony doesn't want her to screw it up. Maybe you build a menu ahead of time. Maybe you've got a large project where you're doing a lot of data entry, and this is a thing that you need to do. You build this menu. Not that hard. I built one. I actually built a really nice one for Henry County, and I think we destroyed it, didn't we, or something? Yeah, we made this we were changing workflows. We were drawing boxes around stuff. He put the logo on there. Man, it looked sharp. I think we deleted it. I don't know what we did. But all that stuff that we were filling out, you can start including in this UI file. Here's the freaky part. Here's the cool part. So you're doing all this work. What is going to keep this from getting deleted? Not much. There's this really nice thing. Let me find it down here. Styles. QGIS, for those of you in the ARC world, you've got LYR files to save your colors. Here you've got two things. The important one is this style file, this QLR, I believe is what it'd be, so let's save it. And notice when I go to save the style, I can save layer configuration, symbology, 3D symbology, labels, fields, forms. I can save my forms. What if I wanted to actually save all of this stuff in the database? So now I'm going to hand all this off to you guys. I'm going to build this database. I'm going to put all these drag and drop menus that I've built into the database. All you got to do is add the database to your thing and import the style in QGIS, and you've got all these menus that I've built. So now you can kind of hand it off to people and say, here, I'm toying with this idea of a cemetery plugin. Actually, I've talked to Leah about this, where you go for people that mapping cemeteries is a thing, and nobody has money to do it, because you go to these churches and they're just like, Fred's over there, Bob's over here, and we were going to plant Sally here, but somebody else already got it. And I went to a family get-together, and that was a legitimate concern because people were buying plots, but they weren't putting up headstones. So my thought is, what if you could build a database just to do cemetery management with all this stuff already built in, so your users don't have to worry about it. They can pick their headstone. They can pick all this stuff. Can you build a plug? Yeah, you can build a plugin to kind of go along with this, but this would be a first step of building a menu system for people to do data entry, which, like I said, data entry makes me twitch because there's nothing worse than we were fixing Chad's data, and wasn't Chad's fault, wasn't anybody's fault. ARC was adding spaces after the data entry. You were tabbing through. In some cases, you have 1 tab, 2 tabs, 3 tabs. And so you had north tab, north 2 tabs, north 3 tabs. That was north in 3 times. So we cleaned all that up. We were kind of ripping all that stuff apart. Man, it makes it so much nicer building your menus like this and setting up your system. Now it's more front end time. You're taking on a project. I would spend a day doing this and just saying, what can we do to make this easier? But you can, and it is very much like domains and subtypes that you see in the ARC world. So, and saving it to the database now, which was a 3.4, this is recent. In fact, I think last time we talked about it, you couldn't do this. You can now save it to the database and actually leverage that amongst everybody. So anybody that hits that database SQLite file geopackage gets the menus. And is that cool or what? Sort of cool?
Will it save
Yeah.
the value relations?
Huh?
Will it save the value relations? Remember,
Yes.
because we talked about the tables.
It'll save them now. I assume in 3.10 it'll save them even better. I assume. Of course, I hadn't used it. I was running 3.10 earlier, and I was scared to bring it. I was scared it was going to blow up on me. I ought to see if it's out. Yeah.
I just had a quick notification
Yeah. Yeah. If you use the same name in the widget as in your column, it inherits all that information that widget you put in. You can build your own widget in the QT Designer and enter the stuff, but if you build it in that, it just inherits all that information that you've done. Which, for those of you who got into mobile field collection, QGIS now has 2 mobile data collection apps, QField and Input. Those will inherit this stuff that I'm setting up. So as you dump this onto your phone, you can get the pick list. It won't do value relations, this complicated drop-down list. That was a bug report. That's actually been reported as a bug, and they're fixing it in Input. Don't think it works in QField, but so you can actually drag QGIS now out on your phone, which I kind of wish I'd done that. Like, I wish I'd done mobile data collection, but that's a whole other discussion. But yes.
Can you do like multi-select things in your form? Like if I had like a bunch of hazards and I wanted to set up sort of domains or whatever.
Like have all the hazards in one field, like
Yeah.
That's a good question. I don't know, actually. I don't think you can.
So maybe I got now.
But actually, you could do key pair. No, I don't know. You can do key value pairs, but I don't think that would do it. I think you'd have to have a field per choice.
Yeah. It's just something we run into so many times.
Yeah. But there's no reason you couldn't have. Maybe you could generate all the possible combinations going out. Like if you've got 3 things, that would be 9 drop-down lists. I don't know. It's a thought. But,
Yeah.
I don't know. Something to look at. Yep.
Is there a way to use that default value expression, but not have the field show up in the
Yes.
form?
Yeah. So you can hide. You can set up the default
Mm-hmm.
and actually say hide this thing.
Oh, okay. Great.
And disappear. If you don't hide it, you can take it out of the drag and drop design. Well, you can build a UI file, or you can get rid of it and drag and drop and just kind of move it out of the way so that nobody sees it. So I can get rid of city, and then we're good to go.
Oh, so it still has a value.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just not in the format. Okay.
Yeah, it's just not in the
Okay.
form. You can still collect a value for it. So it will not. Now, the one thing this thing won't do, and I guess we've hit that a lot with Chad and talking to Ed, you can, in the value relation widget, have it depend on other choices. So you can say, I want PVC, I want this range of values, I need this next range of values. It will not say, look at a field and go, oh, you've picked granite for the headstone. We're only going to let you do this. Like, you got to do it all in one edit. So you can't really build on your edits yet. I got a feeling that's going to change, though, because it's kind of clunky that way. Like, I would rather be able to have an existing value kind of drive my data editing, but it's getting there. And probably if you got into the Python world, you could force it to do that, because once you're here, you can build your own code in here to do whatever you want. And you may be able to build a multiple
Yeah.
editing, maybe. I can't. Yeah.
I was thinking in QT Designer, I don't know, it's been a
Yeah.
while since I last looked at it. There were custom widgets for QGIS,
Yes.
and then there were other widgets, didn't know whether you could use those, but I'm sure in QT Designer, you can have pretty much whatever kind of widget you want,
Yeah.
like a multi-drop-down select. It's whether it's well behaved with QGIS natively.
And I want to say, somewhere in here I've seen where you can select multiples at once, but I don't remember where. But it's possible. And the widgets here you see in QT Designer, these custom widgets for QGIS, they're very specific to QGIS. You can do relation widgets and other things, but I hardly ever use those. Probably should, truth be told, but this works for what I'm doing. So, angst, questions, fear.
Right. You can create, not just hide those in your opening form, but you
Yeah.
can also create tabs
Yeah.
in there, and it makes it a little bit easier to organize.
Did I close? I closed QT Designer. No, I didn't. Yeah, you can build tabs in here. You can build tabs in the QT Designer. Can you build tabs in? I don't think you can do drag and drop. You can put
Yeah, you
tabs in.
can.
You can?
Yeah, that, if you go back to my video that I did at the TINA conference.
Yeah.
I'll show you how to do it in that.
Oh, okay.
Because I put all of my things that I had to fill in on one tab.
Yeah.
All of my defaults were on a separate tab, and then all of my triggers were on a third tab.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so that's, I mean, it's a lot of power built into the forms and built into data editing that you don't really see but once you see it, once you see the forms and the stuff that it can do, pretty nice. It's a pretty nice way to live, you know, input data and hopefully keep your data cleaner than you would have. Yeah, data maintenance, woo, man. So, is that it? Cool.
It will also let you make a mistake and that you don't find until you go to try to save your data.
Perfect.